Captain Elias Ward never expected to survive the crash. His starfighter had been ripped apart in the middle of the battle, struck by a plasma beam that burned through its engines like paper. The last thing he remembered before blacking out was the view of stars spinning, the alarms screaming, and his own hands trying to keep the failing controls steady. When his eyes opened, silence greeted him. No battle sounds, no comms, no squadron voices. Only the distant sound of wind moving through the broken hills of a world he had never seen before. His ship lay in ruins, half buried in black soil, and sparks hissed from torn wires. Elias pulled himself free, coughing, feeling the sting of bruises across his ribs. He checked his survival kit, his blaster, and then looked up at the sky. A strange red sun hung above, casting long shadows across sharp rocks and twisted plants. The place looked dead, but he knew better than to assume. War had taught him that. Quiet worlds often hid dangers. For 2 days, Elias wandered, searching for water, food, and a way to call for rescue. His comms unit was broken beyond repair, and the emergency beacon was weak. Maybe if luck stayed with him, the fleet would detect it. But luck was not something he trusted anymore. On the 3rd day, when hunger and exhaustion began to slow his steps, he found her. At first, he thought it was just another shadow among the rocks, but then the figure moved, small, thin, dragging itself slowly with the help of a wooden staff. An alien girl. Her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly in the red sun. Her dark hair fell unevenly across her face, and her legs moved with difficulty, one bent unnaturally, the other stiff. She leaned heavily on her staff, struggling for every step. When she saw him, her wide, luminous eyes filled with fear. She turned as if to flee, but her weak legs betrayed her, and she stumbled, falling hard against the stones. Elias ran forward, lifting his hands to show he meant no harm. "Easy," he said, though he doubted she understood his language. "I won't hurt you." The girl hissed something in her own tongue, her voice high and trembling. She tried to push herself away, but her body refused to obey her. Elias knelt, studying her injury. Old scars marked her left leg, bones twisted long ago. Not something caused by his crash, something she had lived with for years. He offered his water canteen. She stared at it, suspicious, but when he tipped it gently so a drop fell onto her lips, her suspicion broke. She drank greedily, her hands trembling as she held the container. That was how it began, the strange meeting of a human soldier and a disabled alien girl on a forgotten planet. The days that followed were difficult. Elias built a small shelter, from the broken hull of his fighter, enough to shield them from the icy nights. He hunted small lizard-like creatures with his blaster, cooked them over fire, and shared the food with her. She, in turn, showed him plants that were safe to eat and ones that burned with green fire when thrown into flames. Her name, as he learned after many attempts to speak, was Lyra. She laughed at his clumsy pronunciation, then repeated it slowly until he said it correctly. In return, she tried saying Elias. Her voice soft, her accent strange but clear enough to make him smile. Communication was hard, but not impossible. She drew pictures in the dirt, acted out shapes with her hands, and slowly, words passed between them. Elias learned that she had lived alone for many months after losing her family in a raid. She could not run, could not climb, but she refused to give up. She had survived with sheer determination. Elias admired her. In his world, soldiers with wounds like hers were often sent home, told they could no longer serve. But here was Lyra with broken legs, living in a place where every day was a fight. She was stronger than she looked, yet he could also see her loneliness. At night, when she thought he was asleep, she sang to herself in a quiet voice. Sad songs. Songs of people who never came back. Danger came often. The planet was not empty. Strange beasts moved under the soil, hunting at night. Once, Elias woke to the sound of Lyra screaming as a massive insect-like creature crawled into their camp. Its mandibles snapped, its armored body glistening in the firelight. Elias did not hesitate. He fired his blaster until the thing fell dead, smoking. But he knew energy cells would not last forever. The next day, he built a spear from metal scraps and wood. He built another for her, though she could not fight as he did. Still, she held it tightly, proud to be trusted with a weapon. He also built something else, a crude frame with wheels made from parts of his broken ship. It was rough, heavy, and hard to move, but it gave her freedom she had not known in years. When he placed her on it and pushed her across the ground, she laughed, a sound like pure sunlight breaking through the red sky. "Elias," she said in her halting voice, touching her chest. Then she touched his chest and said, "Lyra." It was her way of saying they were no longer strangers. Weeks passed. Together they faced storms that tore across the plains, nights where they huddled close against freezing winds, and days of endless searching for fresh water. Each moment, their bond grew. Elias began to dream of rescue less and less. The beacon still pulsed, but no one came. Perhaps the fleet believed him dead. Perhaps the war had moved on, leaving them behind. But Lyra gave him purpose. Protecting. Her kept his heart alive. Teaching her human words, hearing her laugh, watching her stubbornly pull herself across rocks instead of waiting for help. These things reminded him why humanity fought at all, not just for survival but for connections like this. One evening, as they sat beside the fire, Lyra looked at him for a long time before speaking. "You leave?" she asked in broken English. Elias felt his chest tighten. He wanted to promise. He would never leave, that he would stay forever. But he also knew the truth. If rescue came, duty would call him back. "I don't know," he admitted softly. "But if I do, I will come back." She lowered her eyes, her expression unreadable, yet she nodded as if to say she understood. Rescue came suddenly. A human patrol ship descended one morning, guided by the weak beacon. Soldiers poured out, shocked to see their captain alive. As they prepared to leave, Elias turned to Lyra. She stood with the help of her staff, watching him with steady eyes. He rushed to her, holding her hands. "I'll come back," he said, again more desperate this time. "I promise." She touched his face gently, then spoke in her own tongue. He did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. The soldiers urged him onto the shuttle. He looked back one last time. Lyra stood tall, fire in her gaze, even with her broken legs. A fragile figure, but unbroken. The engines roared, lifting him into the sky. The world shrank beneath him, and with it, the small silver figure of the girl he had left behind. Elias told himself he would return, that he would find her again. But war has a way of burying promises. And so, Lyra remained in his memory, bright, fragile, and unfinished. A forgotten rescue, a bond cut short, for now. Captain Elias Ward had seen many battles, but none of them haunted him the way his memories of that lonely planet did. Years had passed since the crash, years of service, victories, losses, and medals. To his fellow officers, he was a decorated soldier, a man who had carried humanity's flag across the stars. But when Elias closed his eyes at night, he still saw her. Lyra, the fragile girl with silver skin and broken legs, who had survived against all odds, the girl he had promised to return for, and the girl he had left behind. He told himself countless times that he would find her, that he would search the Veyari records, request missions near her world, anything. But the war never allowed him. There was always another battle, another enemy fleet, another order. He buried his guilt under duty, but it never disappeared. Now, standing in the grand hall of a human Veyari diplomatic summit, the past came crashing back. The hall was vast, built of shining crystal and steel, a mix of human architecture and Veyari design. Flags of both civilizations hung side by side. Soldiers in white uniforms stood guard along the walls, while diplomats whispered in quiet voices about treaties, trade, and peace. Elias stood near the edge of the gathering, his officer's coat sharp, his medals gleaming. But he was not here as a warrior. He was here as a witness to peace, representing those who had once fought but now sought to rebuild. He was listening half-heartedly to a speech when the Veyari envoy entered. The hall grew silent. She was taller now, no longer a frail girl but a young woman. Her silver skin shimmered softly in the lights, and her dark hair had been braided with small metal beads that sang faintly as she moved. She leaned on a polished staff, her step slow but steady. The old injury was still there, but she carried it with strength, not shame. Elias's heart stopped. Lyra. She walked with the dignity of a leader, though every step was careful. Her eyes scanned the hall, calm yet sharp. Then suddenly they landed on him. Her expression froze. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The crowd around them continued its formal rituals, but for Elias, the world had narrowed to those luminous eyes, the same eyes that had once watched him build fires in the dark, the same eyes that had once looked at him with trust and sorrow. She walked forward, slow but determined, until she stood only a few feet away from him. The hall fell into silence, diplomats pausing to watch. Her voice was clear, her human words careful but firm. "Do you remember me?" Elias's throat tightened. "Yes," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Lyra." The sound of her name seemed to echo in the hall. Some of the humans glanced at each other in confusion. Many of the Veyari stiffened, their expressions unreadable, but neither Elias nor Lyra cared. "I am the disabled girl you partnered with," she said, her words heavy. "You promised to return." Her tone was not warm. It was sharp, filled with something between pain and accusation. Elias felt the weight of every broken promise crash upon him. Later, when the formal session ended, Elias found himself standing outside the crystal garden of the Veyari embassy. He waited, unsure if she would come, but she did. Lyra stepped carefully across the garden's smooth path, her staff clicking softly against the stones. The moonlight reflected off her skin, making her look both fragile and strong, like something carved of silver but filled with fire. "You lived," she said simply. "So did you," Elias replied. Her eyes narrowed. "You forgot me." "I never forgot," he said quickly, almost desperately. "Not a day passed that I didn't think of you. I tried. I wanted to come back, but the war," she repeated, bitterness in her voice. "Always the war." He flinched. He could not argue. "I was alone," she continued softly. "After you left, I waited. I told myself you would return. Every day I told myself. But no one came." Elias closed his eyes, guilt burning inside him. "I failed you," he admitted. "I failed my promise." For a long moment she was silent. Then she sighed and looked at the stars. "You gave me hope when I had none," she said. "You built me a way to move. You fought beside me. I trusted you. But trust is fragile, Elias. Hard to build. Easy to break." Her voice shook, but she stood tall. Elias stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "I don't ask for forgiveness, but give me a chance to prove I never stopped caring. I was trapped in duty, but you were never forgotten. Not to me." Her eyes softened slightly, but pain still lingered. Over the next days of the summit, they saw each other often. Not as friends, not yet, but as two people tied by a past neither could erase. Elias walked beside her when she crossed the halls, always at her pace, never rushing ahead. At first she refused his help, leaning only on her staff, but slowly, she began to accept his presence. One evening, during a banquet, he found her sitting alone by a pool of glowing water. She was humming softly, the same melody she once sang at night in their camp. "You still remember that song," he said quietly. Her eyes flicked toward him. "And you still remember my voice." They shared silence, heavy but not hostile. Politics, however, were less forgiving. The Veyari Council debated fiercely. Some saw humans as potential allies. Others saw them as dangerous conquerors. Elias soon learned that Lyra held an important role among her people. not only as a survivor of war, but as a symbol. Despite her disability, she had risen to become a voice of strength. Her presence at the summit carried weight, and her connection to a human soldier? That was dangerous. One night, as Elias returned to his quarters, a fellow officer warned him. "Be careful," the officer said. "The Vayari Council whispers about you and the envoy. They don't like it. They think it makes her weak." Elias's jaw tightened. "She's not weak. She's stronger than any of us." But he understood the warning. Their bond, once born in survival, now stood at the edge of politics and suspicion. Lyra herself struggled. She wanted to believe Elias, wanted to trust that his memories of her were true. Yet every time she looked at him, she also remembered the shuttle lifting into the sky, leaving her alone in the dust. One evening, as they walked together in the quiet garden, she spoke the words she had held back for so long. "Why did you promise?" she asked softly. "Why give me hope, if you could not keep it?" Elias stopped. His chest ached with the weight of truth. "Because I wanted to believe it myself," he said. "Because I couldn't bear to think I was leaving you forever. That promise kept me alive through the war, but it became a chain too heavy to carry. I failed it, and I failed you." She looked at him, her expression torn between anger and sorrow. "Do you want me to forgive you?" she asked. "No," he said firmly. "I want you to see that I'm still here, that I will stand beside you now, not with promises, but with action." Her eyes glistened, though she quickly looked away. The summit neared its climax. Tensions between human and Vayari delegates grew sharper. Rumors of sabotage whispered through the halls. Elias kept close to Lyra, protecting her when unrest rose, and slowly their bond began to mend. Not with grand gestures, but with small ones, sharing quiet meals, walking together under strange stars, remembering old survival lessons. One night she placed her hand lightly on his arm and said, "I believe you did not forget me, but belief is not trust. Trust must grow again." Elias nodded, his voice low. "Then let me earn it, no more broken promises." For the first time she smiled, not the bright laughter of a girl in the wilderness, but the calm, steady smile of a woman who had survived much and still endured. And though the summit still shook with danger, Elias felt a fragile hope return, a hope that the bond he once lost could be rebuilt. The summit that was meant to bring peace instead grew heavy with suspicion. Every day the air inside the crystal halls felt tighter, like a storm building in silence. Words spoken by diplomats carried hidden blades, and every gesture was watched by 100 cautious eyes. Elias Ward had fought in many battles, but this war of words and glances was unlike anything he knew. Here, strength was not shown with ships or weapons, but with patience, dignity, and trust. And trust was breaking. The Vayari Council split into two voices. Some argued that humans were a chance for unity. Others claimed humans were too dangerous, too hungry for power. Rumors spread that humans wished to control Vayari trade, or that they would never respect Vayari traditions. At the center of it all was Lyra. To her people, she was more than an envoy. She was a survivor who carried scars of war and disability but still stood tall. She represented resilience. Every word she spoke was remembered, every step she took was judged. And to the humans, she was a symbol of hope, that trust could grow even in the harshest of places. But her connection to Elias complicated everything. One evening during a council session, a Vayari elder rose and spoke sharply. His voice echoed across the chamber, cold and hard. "This summit has been poisoned," he declared. "The human captain stands too close to our envoy. How can she speak freely for the Vayari if her heart is bound to one of their soldiers?" The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward Lyra. Elias felt his muscles tense. He wanted to defend her, to shout back at the elder, but he knew this was not his place. His words would only add fuel to the fire. Lyra's silver eyes glowed faintly as she lifted her head. Her voice was calm, but every word carried steel. My heart belongs to my people, she said. It always has, and it always will. Do not mistake gratitude for betrayal. Do not mistake memory for weakness. Her words silenced the chamber, but Elias saw the pain hidden in her gaze. She had been forced to choose her people in words, even if her feelings were more complicated. That night, Elias found her in the quiet garden again, sitting by the glowing waters. Her staff rested at her side and her face was weary. You defended yourself well, he said softly. Her eyes flicked toward him, then back to the water. I should not have to defend myself at all, she whispered. But to them, every step I take is questioned. Every word I speak is tested. And now, because of you, it is worse. Elias felt the sting of her words, but he did not argue. I didn't want this for you, he said. If my presence harms you, I will step back. She turned to him suddenly, her eyes sharp. Would you? He hesitated. If it meant protecting you, yes. Her gaze softened slightly, but her voice remained heavy. You left me once, Elias. I cannot survive being left again. The words struck deep. Elias wanted to promise her that he would never leave, but promises had already failed them once. Instead, he said only, I will not abandon you now, not while I still breathe. She looked away, silent, but he saw her fingers tighten on her staff. The days grew darker. Strange whispers spread through the summit. Supplies went missing. Messages between councils were intercepted. Someone wanted this alliance to fail. One night, as Elias walked the outer halls, he caught a shadow moving where no guard should be. Instinct sharpened his senses. He followed quietly, hand on his blaster. The figure slipped through a side door and Elias caught the faint glimmer of a Veyari cloak. When he entered, the chamber was empty, but etched into the floor was a symbol he recognized from old war reports. A mark of a radical group, one that despised peace between humans and Veyari. The next day he warned the human ambassador, but the man only frowned. Do not cause panic, Captain. If you spread such claims, the Veyari may believe we are accusing them. Elias clenched his fists. So we just do nothing? We wait, the ambassador replied coldly. Elias knew waiting was dangerous. He had fought enough wars to recognize the smell of sabotage. Meanwhile, Lyra faced her own struggles. Members of her council cornered her in private sessions, demanding she distance herself from Elias. You are making us appear weak, one elder hissed. The humans will think we bend to their soldiers. I do not bend, Lyra replied calmly. I stand. Even with broken legs, I stand taller than you who hide behind fear. The elder bristled, but Lyra walked away, leaning on her staff with unshaken pride. Yet when she was alone, doubt crept in. She thought of Elias's face when the shuttle carried him away years ago. She thought of his words now, filled with guilt and hope. Could she trust him again? Or was she fooling herself with memories of firelit nights and laughter in the wilderness? Her heart battled between anger and longing. One evening, during a formal dinner, the tension snapped. A Veyari elder, bold and sharp-tongued, turned to Elias across the table. Tell us, human, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. Do you see our envoy as a diplomat, or as your possession? The hall froze. All eyes shifted to Elias. He felt heat rise in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. She is no one's possession. She is stronger than I will ever be. She saved me as much as I saved her. The elder sneered. A convenient tale. Before Elias could answer, Lyra's staff struck the floor. The sharp sound silenced the hall. Enough, she said, her voice commanding. Do not insult him. Do not insult me. I am Veyari. I choose my own path, and I will not let either side twist my history into a weapon. Her words echoed, and for once, no one dared challenge her. But later, when she and Elias stood alone, she whispered, They will not stop. They will keep testing us until one of us breaks. Elias met her gaze firmly. Then we don't break. As the summit moved toward its final days, threats grew. A human guard was found unconscious, his weapon stolen. A Veyari supply ship exploded in orbit. Fingers pointed both ways, and in the middle stood Lyra and Elias, bound by a bond that others saw as both dangerous and unshakable. One night, when fear and pressure felt too heavy, Lyra spoke quietly to Elias in the garden. "When we were stranded," she said, "you made me believe I was not alone. But when you left, that belief shattered. Now, standing beside you, I feel that hope again. And that frightens me more than any war." Elias placed his hand gently over hers. "Then let me carry that fear with you. You don't have to face it alone anymore." Her eyes filled with conflict, pain, doubt, but also something brighter. She looked at him for a long moment, then whispered, "If you fail me again, Elias, it will not only break me, it will break everything we are fighting for." He nodded, his voice steady. "Then I cannot fail." And though the shadows of conspiracy moved closer, though the summit shook with danger, in that moment, a fragile thread of trust began to mend between them. The summit was meant to end in 2 days. Peace treaties were written, trade agreements drafted, speeches prepared. To the public eye, everything looked calm, as if both sides had finally found common ground. But Elias Ward knew better. He had seen too many wars to mistake silence for safety. He felt it in the way guards tightened their patrols, in the way whispers spread faster than official words, in the way shadows moved just beyond the light of the council halls. Something was coming, and he feared Lyra was at the center of it. Lyra felt it too. She could see the tension in her people's eyes, in the way the Veyari elders spoke less and whispered more. She heard the rumors, that radicals wanted to stop the treaty, that some were willing to strike at anyone who stood for peace. Her name came up too often in these whispers. To many Veyari, she had become more than an envoy. She was a symbol of survival, of strength despite weakness. To destroy her would send a clear message that peace had no future. That night, as the red moon cast its glow across the crystal gardens, Lyra confessed her fear to Elias. "They will come for me," she said quietly, her hand tight around her staff. "Not the council, not the diplomats, the radicals. They believe killing me will break the talks." Elias met her eyes firmly. "Then they will have to go through me first." Her lips trembled as if she wanted to argue, but she said nothing. She only nodded once, accepting his words. The attack came the next evening. The council hall was filled, with music and speeches, a final celebration before the treaty was signed. Humans and Veyari raised glasses together, smiling for the first time in months. But behind the laughter, Elias's instincts screamed danger. He kept his eyes on the entrances, on the guards, on every small movement. Then it happened. The lights flickered. A sharp hiss filled the hall as smoke poured in from the ceiling vents. Shouts erupted as diplomats stumbled, coughing, covering their faces. Through the chaos, Elias saw them, figures cloaked in dark armor, moving like shadows, armed, fast, and merciless. "Lyra!" he shouted. She was already struggling, her staff slipping as the smoke stung her lungs. One of the attackers lunged toward her, blade gleaming. Elias moved without thought. He slammed into the attacker, knocking him to the ground. His blaster fired once, striking another shadow in the chest. "Stay with me." Elias grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her close as he shielded her with his body. She clung to him, her silver, eyes wide with fear but burning with defiance. More attackers closed in. Elias fired, struck, pushed them back, but there were too many. The smoke thickened, making it hard to see. He felt a blade slash across his shoulder, burning pain spreading. But he did not let go of Lyra. "Move," he shouted, dragging her toward the side corridor. Her injured legs slowed them, but he refused to leave her behind. They stumbled into the corridor, coughing. Behind them, the sounds of battle filled the hall. Guards fought the attackers, diplomats screamed, alarms blared. But Elias knew the radicals. True target was not the treaty. It was her. They ran, or rather, Elias half-carried her, through the twisting halls of the embassy. Twice attackers cut them off, and twice Elias fought them back, his blaster glowing hot. At one point, Lyra grabbed a fallen guard's short blade and held it tightly in her hands. "I will fight too," she said, her voice fierce. Elias wanted to tell her no, but he saw the fire in her eyes and simply nodded. Together they pressed on. Finally, they reached a hidden chamber at the edge of the embassy, a maintenance room filled with old machines. Elias sealed the door, breathing hard, blood dripping from his wounded shoulder. Lyra sank to the floor, her staff clattering beside her. She looked at him, her face pale but determined. "They will not stop," she said. "They want me gone. If I die, they believe the treaty dies with me." Elias knelt beside her, gripping her hand. "Then you will not die. Not while I'm here." Her eyes searched his face, and in that moment she saw no hesitation, no fear. Only loyalty, raw and unshaken. "You left me once," she whispered. "And I swore I'd never fail you again," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos outside. Her lips trembled. "Show me, Elias, prove it now." He squeezed her hand tightly. "I already am." The attackers found them. The door shook as explosives tore it open. Smoke filled the room again, and armored figures poured in, weapons raised. Elias stood in front of Lyra, blaster in one hand, a broken metal rod in the other. His shoulder bled, his body ached, but his resolve was iron. They charged. The fight was brutal. Elias struck, blocked, fired. A blade sliced across his arm, another cut his side, but he did not fall. He fought like a storm, every strike fueled by the single truth that he would not lose her again. Behind him, Lyra fought too. She swung her staff, striking an attacker's leg, knocking him to the ground. She threw a blade with surprising accuracy, forcing another to retreat, but there were too many. Elias staggered, almost falling as a blow knocked the breath from him. An attacker raised his blade for the final strike. "No," Lyra cried. She hurled herself forward, staff clashing against the blade. The impact knocked her down, but it gave Elias the opening he needed. With a roar, he struck the attacker down. Moments later, guards stormed the chamber. The radicals, realizing defeat, fled into the smoke. The fight was over. Elias collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily, blood staining his uniform. Lyra crawled to his side, her hands trembling as she tried to stop his bleeding with a torn piece of cloth. "You fool," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "You would have died for me." "Yes," he said simply, without question. She looked at him, her heart pounding. For the first time since their reunion, she believed his words fully. He had not abandoned her now. He had stood, bled, and nearly died for her. And she realized that trust could be rebuilt not with promises but with actions. The next day, the hall was quiet again, though scarred by the attack. Diplomats whispered of betrayal, of radicals, of what this meant for peace. But Lyra stood tall before both councils, her voice steady despite the bandages on her arms. "They tried to silence me," she said, "but I live, and I will keep living, not for myself but for peace. If they strike me again, I will rise again, because strength is not found in perfect bodies but in unbroken spirits." Her words carried across the hall, and for the first time, humans and Veyari applauded together. Elias stood in the crowd, wounded but alive, watching her with pride. When her eyes found his, she smiled softly. Not the bitter, guarded smile of before, but a true one. The smile of trust reborn. The sun rose over the summit city, casting soft light over the crystal towers that reflected both human and Veyari design. After the attack, the city had slowly returned to a fragile calm. Soldiers patrolled carefully, diplomats resumed their duties, and the air buzzed with cautious optimism. But for Elias Ward, the war outside was nothing compared to the storm he felt inside. The events of the previous night had left him wounded both physically and emotionally. He rubbed his shoulder, feeling the deep bruises and cuts that would heal slowly. Yet he felt alive. Alive because Lyra had survived. Alive because he had proven he would not abandon her. He looked across the grand plaza where the summit was to conclude. Lyra stood before the Veyari Council, her staff resting lightly in her hands. Though her movements were careful, her posture radiated authority and strength. The silver sheen of her skin reflected the sunlight, and her dark eyes carried both determination and a quiet warmth. Elias felt a pull in his chest. She had grown, changed, yet remained the same girl who had survived against all odds on a forgotten planet. She was no longer fragile. She was a leader, a symbol, a force that could not be ignored. The council session began with tense speeches. Veyari elders spoke first, some cautious, some still doubtful. Human ambassadors followed, presenting proposals for trade, security, and shared technology. The past attack had shaken both sides, but it had also created a strange unity. Both humans and Veyari realized that peace would require trust, courage, and collaboration. Elias stayed close to Lyra, standing silently behind her as she answered questions, explained her positions, and guided discussions. Every word she spoke carried weight. Every glance she gave reminded Elias of her resilience. Finally, the last session approached. Both sides would sign the treaty that would mark the beginning of a true alliance. But just as the ink was about to meet the page, a messenger arrived, breathless and panicked. "Another attack," he said. "A ship approaches from the outer orbit. It is armed and heading toward the city." A murmur spread through the room. Soldiers moved quickly to prepare defenses. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She turned to Elias. "Stay with me," she said. "I will," he replied, gripping her hand. This time, they were ready. The Veyari and human fleets outside the city coordinated immediately. Warning sirens rang, and the sky filled with the hum of ships preparing for battle. But Lyra and Elias stayed inside the council chamber, focused on the people around them. "They must know we are not afraid," she whispered. He nodded. "Together, we can show them that strength is more than weapons." The attackers arrived, but their force was smaller than expected. The combined fleets of humans and Veyari quickly surrounded them, forcing the intruders to retreat. The council chamber remained, safe, the summit unharmed. Relief washed over everyone. Diplomats, soldiers, and citizens cheered. Lyra took a deep breath, leaning lightly on her staff, and turned to Elias. "You see?" she said softly. "Peace is possible. If we stand together, nothing can break us." Elias smiled, though he was still tired and wounded. "You were right, and you led the way." She looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting both pride and affection. "We led the way, together." After the summit, the signing ceremony took place in the Crystal Plaza. Humans and Veyari gathered, banners waving, music playing. Cameras recorded every moment. Leaders from both sides spoke about the importance of trust, courage, and unity. Lyra stepped forward as the representative of the Veyari. She raised her staff and addressed the crowd. "Today is not the day of a single species," she said. "It is the day of those who survive, those who endure, those who choose hope over fear. Let this treaty remind us that we are stronger together, that even the broken and wounded have power when hearts are united." The applause was deafening. Elias, standing behind her, felt tears prick his eyes. She had not only survived, she had become a symbol of hope, of resilience, and of unity. Later, when the crowds dispersed, Elias and Lyra walked together through the gardens of the summit city. The air was calm, the red sun warm on their skin. She leaned lightly on her staff, and he stayed close, ready to support her if needed. "You have changed," he said softly. "So have you," she replied. "You are not the frightened man who stumbled across my world years ago. You are someone who has learned to endure, to protect, to trust." He looked at her, searching her eyes. "And you? Are you still the girl I promised to return for?" She laughed softly, a sound like the first breeze of spring. "I am not the girl you left behind. I am stronger. I survived without you for years, but I am still the one who remembers you. And now I stand with you, not because of the past, but because of what we can do together." He nodded, feeling warmth spread through his chest. At last, the weight of guilt lifted. He had failed before, yes, but now they faced the future together. Days turned into weeks, and the human-Vaori alliance began to take root. Trade routes opened, communication channels expanded, and soldiers trained together. For both species, it was a new beginning. Lyra played a key role, guiding humans through Vaori culture and helping Vaori understand humans. Her disability never slowed her. Instead, it became a symbol of resilience. Every time she demonstrated strength, patience, or wisdom, Elias felt pride he could barely contain. He helped her where he could, not because she needed protection, but because he wanted to be part of her world. They laughed together, trained together, and shared quiet moments beneath alien skies. Their bond deepened, not only as survivors but as equals. No longer student and protector, no longer human and alien divided by culture, but partners in every sense. One evening, Elias and Lyra stood on the balcony of the summit tower, looking out at the city bathed in twilight. The sky was a gradient of red and gold, stars beginning to pierce the fading light. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Elias asked softly. "When we met on that broken planet?" She nodded, her gaze distant. "I remember every moment. The fires, the rivers, the nights when we had nothing but each other. I remember fear, yes, but also hope. You gave me hope when I had none. And you gave me courage," he replied. "I learned to fight, to survive, to care for someone other than myself. I became better because of you." They stood in silence, letting the memories settle like a gentle wind. Then she placed her hand lightly on his arm. "We are different now. We have both grown. But one thing has not changed." "What is that?" he asked. She smiled, soft and steady. "We trust each other. And that trust is stronger than any weapon, stronger than any enemy." He took her hand in his, feeling the warmth, the reality of her presence. "Stronger than anything," he said. Months passed, and life continued. Lyra trained new diplomats and leaders, showing that even those with disabilities could shape the future. Elias returned to his fleet duties but remained close, visiting often, sharing experiences, and learning Vaori culture. Their bond became a bridge between worlds. Humans and Vaori, who once feared each other, now worked side by side, inspired by the example of two individuals who had survived, trusted, and protected each other. The red sun rose and set, and the city flourished. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined the future. Elias and Lyra walked together through the plaza one final evening, their hands clasped, the crowd around them oblivious to the quiet strength of their union. "You know," Elias said, glancing at her, "I promised I would return." "And you did," she replied with a soft laugh. "Not as a promise, but as a choice. Every day." They smiled, not as human and alien, not as survivor and protector, but as partners in a world that had once been broken and was now healing. Together, they looked out at the horizon, toward the red sun and the bright future beyond it. No longer haunted by the past, no longer bound by fear. Just two hearts, two species united in trust, courage, and hope.